Let's be honest, most conversations about why men have SPSX focus only on physical attraction. But what if I told you that attraction is just the surface? Behind every moment of intimacy, there are layers of psychology, emotion, and intention that most people never notice. Understanding these layers isn't about judging men, it's about understanding them, so you can make choices from a place of confidence, not confusion. Emotional connection versus physical desire is one of the most misunderstood dynamics when it comes to why men seek intimacy. On the surface, it might appear that attraction is purely physical, a reaction to appearance, body language, or chemistry. But beneath that surface lies something deeper, often hidden even from men themselves. Many men are taught from an early age to disconnect their emotions from their desires. Society rewards control, independence, and strength, but rarely teaches emotional intelligence. As a result, a man may chase physical experiences as a way to fulfill emotional needs he doesn't know how to express. When a man seeks intimacy, it's not always about the physical act. It can be about validation, affirmation, or connection. For some, it's the only space where they feel accepted without needing to explain themselves. In everyday life, men are often expected to be logical, tough, and composed. Showing vulnerability can feel dangerous. So when they find someone who makes them feel desired, it triggers something emotional, a sense of worth, belonging, and acceptance. This feeling can easily be mistaken for love or deep connection, even when it's not rooted in genuine emotional depth. The key difference between emotional connection and physical desire lies in intention. Desire is immediate. It seeks satisfaction, pleasure, and release. Emotional connection takes time. It's built through consistency, trust, and understanding. Many men confuse the intensity of desire with the warmth of connection. The rush of attraction feels powerful, almost addictive. But when the desire fades, the emotional void remains, often leaving both people confused and unfulfilled. A man may initiate intimacy because he craves emotional closeness, but doesn't know how to communicate that need. Physical intimacy becomes his language, a silent way of saying, "I want to feel close to you." He may not even realize he's seeking emotional comfort through physical touch. In the moment, it feels like connection, but when the emotional foundation isn't there, the bond quickly dissolves. That's why many relationships that start with strong chemistry burn out just as fast. They were built on physical emotion, not emotional understanding. This dynamic can be deeply confusing. It's easy to interpret a man's passion, attention, and intensity as emotional interest. After all, he's present, affectionate, maybe even gentle, but his motivations might be tied more to how he feels about himself in the moment than how he feels about you. When a man is seeking validation, he's not necessarily seeking partnership. He's seeking to feel enough, even if only temporarily. That's why after intimacy, some men pull away. They've filled the emotional void they were trying to soothe, but haven't built a connection strong enough to sustain it. Understanding this doesn't mean judging men or assuming every act of intimacy is shallow. It means recognizing that emotional awareness plays a massive role in attraction. A man who has learned to understand his emotions, to connect from a place of vulnerability rather than validation, approaches intimacy differently. He doesn't use physical closeness to replace emotional connection. He uses it to deepen it. The difference is presence. When a man connects emotionally first, his actions align with respect and authenticity. Every man carries emotional needs, even if he hides them behind charm, humor, or confidence. Intimacy can be his attempt to meet those needs, to feel seen in a world that rarely allows him to be soft. But until he learns to separate emotional hunger from physical desire, he'll continue to confuse one for the other. And the women who understand this difference gain something powerful, the ability to see beyond the surface, to recognize whether his touch is driven by connection or by emptiness. That awareness isn't just protection, it's empowerment. It allows you to choose who gets close, not based on how they make you feel in the moment, but on what they bring into your emotional world. Ego and self-image play a profound role in shaping why men seek intimacy, often more than they consciously realize. From a young age, men are conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to performance, how successful they are, how desirable they appear, and how confident they seem. Society rewards achievement, not vulnerability. Because of this, many men begin to associate their self-esteem with external validation rather than internal peace. When a man feels uncertain about himself, after rejection, failure, or even a simple dip in confidence, intimacy can become a way to repair his ego, to prove to himself that he's still wanted, attractive, or powerful. For many, the desire to be seen as desirable isn't about arrogance. It's about reassurance. It's about silencing that inner voice that says, "You're not enough." When a woman shows interest or desire, it feeds that need for significance. For a brief moment, he feels validated. He feels like he's in control, capable, and strong again. But that feeling is temporary. It fades as quickly as it comes, which is why some men chase new experiences again and again, trying to maintain that fleeting sense of confidence through external approval. Ego-driven intimacy isn't always intentional or manipulative. Often, it's subconscious. A man may not think, "I'm doing this to boost my self-image." But emotionally, that's exactly what's happening. His sense of masculinity is tied to how desired he feels. When life challenges him, through stress, failure, or emotional rejection, he looks for something that reminds him of his worth. For many men, intimacy becomes that shortcut to self-assurance. It's not love he's chasing, it's validation disguised as connection. This behavior creates confusion, especially for women who interpret his intensity as genuine affection. He may say all the right things, show affection, and seem emotionally invested, but if his actions stem from ego rather than genuine connection, they'll feel inconsistent. Once the excitement fades, so does his attention because the emotional void inside him has resurfaced. The very thing he used intimacy to escape, the insecurity, returns stronger, demanding more validation to quiet it again. The ego can be deceptive. It tells a man that if someone desires him, then he must be valuable. But real confidence doesn't come from being wanted. It comes from knowing your worth without needing to prove it. When a man hasn't built that internal sense of value, he becomes dependent on external approval. Every compliment, every flirtation, every physical encounter becomes a way to maintain his fragile sense of self. Yet the more he seeks it, the emptier he feels, because no amount of external validation can replace inner confidence. This is why understanding ego and self-image is so crucial when it comes to intimacy. A man's motivation reveals whether he's connecting out of authenticity or insecurity. When he's operating from ego, intimacy serves his self-esteem, not his emotions. But when he's operating from confidence, intimacy becomes an expression of genuine connection and care. He doesn't need it to feel powerful. He chooses it to share something meaningful. For women, recognizing this difference is empowering. If a man's attention seems to fluctuate, if he's deeply interested one moment and distant the next, it's often because his ego was satisfied, not his heart. His need wasn't to know you. It was to feel better about himself. Understanding this pattern protects you from taking his inconsistency personally. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of his unresolved relationship with his own. The healthiest form of intimacy comes from two people who feel whole on their own. A confident man doesn't need intimacy to feel validated. He engages in it because he already values himself and the person he's with. His self-image isn't built on conquest or control. It's built on connection, respect, and authenticity. When a man learns to find confidence within himself rather than through others, intimacy transforms. It's no longer a means to an end. It becomes an honest exchange, free from ego, full of presence. Until then, Many men will keep mistaking attention for affection and validation for value, never realizing that the peace they seek through others can only be found within themselves. Comfort and escape are two of the most underrated yet powerful motivators behind why many men seek intimacy. While the world often portrays men as confident, detached, and in control of their emotions, the truth is far more complex. Beneath that exterior, many men carry emotional stress, loneliness, and a deep need for comfort that they rarely express. In a world that tells them to man up, they learn to hide pain rather than process it. They suppress their worries, doubts, and fears because showing emotion feels like weakness. This emotional buildup creates an inner emptiness that demands relief. Intimacy, for many men, becomes the escape hatch, a temporary way to silence the noise in their minds and feel something real, even if just for a moment. When a man engages in intimacy as a form of comfort, it's less about desire and more about seeking emotional peace. It's a moment where he can feel warmth, closeness, and acceptance without having to explain himself. The physical act becomes a substitute for emotional connection, a wordless way to experience calm and closeness that he might not know how to ask for verbally. In those moments, intimacy is like a pause button on life. The stress, the expectations, the loneliness, all fade, replaced by the illusion of safety. It's not about physical pleasure as much as it is about emotional relief. The escape aspect of intimacy often comes from emotional exhaustion. Men, like anyone else, face pressures from work, family, finances, and the constant demand to appear strong. When they don't have healthy outlets to release that tension, they turn to the easiest one available, physical connection. It's a quick fix that feels meaningful in the moment but fades quickly, leaving them wanting more. For some, it becomes a pattern, seeking out new experiences to recreate that same feeling of temporary peace. The problem is, escape doesn't heal anything. It simply hides the pain, pushing it further beneath the surface until it resurfaces again, stronger than before. Many men also use intimacy to escape emotional voids created by loss, rejection, or self-doubt. After a breakup, for instance, some dive into physical relationships not because they were ready to move on, but because they're desperate to fill the space left behind. They mistake touch for healing and attention for affection. It feels comforting at first, but once the moment ends, the emptiness returns, reminding them that what they really crave isn't physical, it's emotional stability and peace. Expressing that need feels foreign or unsafe, so they continue to use intimacy as their emotional medicine, unaware that it only masks the pain instead of curing it. For women, understanding this hidden motive changes perspective. When a man seems emotionally detached after being intimate, it's not always because he didn't care. Sometimes it's because he was never trying to build a connection in the first place. He was trying to find relief. He was seeking escape, not commitment. His quiet afterward isn't rejection, it's reflection. The temporary calm he felt has passed, and now he's back in the reality he was trying to avoid. This is why emotional awareness is so essential in relationships, because without it, both people end up playing roles in a story neither truly understands. True comfort doesn't come from temporary escape. It comes from emotional connection. A man who has learned to sit with his feelings, to process them rather than run from them, no longer needs intimacy as a coping mechanism. He seeks it as an extension of emotional trust and love, not as an escape from his pain. When he reaches that level of maturity, intimacy becomes a place of shared peace instead of personal escape. But until then, many men will continue to chase closeness not to bond, but to breathe, to find momentary freedom from their own inner storms. Recognizing this difference allows you to see beyond the surface, to understand whether his need for you comes from a place of love or a need to hide from himself. Curiosity and novelty are powerful forces that often drive human behavior. And for many men, these forces play a major role in their pursuit of intimacy. At its core, curiosity is about exploration. It's the desire to experience something new, to understand a different kind of energy, personality, or dynamic. When it comes to relationships and attraction, this curiosity can manifest as a fascination with what's unfamiliar exciting, or unpredictable. The thrill of discovery becomes emotionally stimulating, even intoxicating. For some men, this is not about love or deep emotional connection, but about experiencing something they haven't felt before. The unknown carries a sense of adventure, and that adventure feeds the male ego's need for stimulation, achievement, and control. This kind of curiosity doesn't necessarily come from bad intentions. It often comes from a natural human impulse to explore and to learn through experience. A man might meet someone who challenges him mentally, behaves differently than what he's used to, or exudes a kind of mystery that sparks his imagination. In that moment, he becomes captivated. The excitement of figuring her out becomes the fuel for attraction. The physical desire that follows isn't always about connection. It's about satisfying that curiosity, about uncovering what it feels like to share closeness with someone who seems unique or out of reach. It's the emotional version of chasing an unanswered question. Curiosity can be fleeting. Once the newness fades, the interest that once felt magnetic can begin to weaken. That's because novelty activates the brain's reward system. It gives a rush of dopamine, the same chemical linked to pleasure and excitement. But like any rush, it's temporary. When the mystery is gone, the brain no longer finds the same level of stimulation, and what once felt irresistible can start to feel ordinary. This is why some men move quickly from one connection to another, always chasing that initial spark. They're not necessarily looking for love. They're chasing the high that comes from discovery, attention, and novelty. For many men, curiosity also serves as a test. They may be exploring what types of people attract them, what kind of dynamics make them feel alive, or how certain interactions affect their confidence. They might not be ready for emotional depth, but want to understand what draws them in and why. It's a form of self-exploration disguised as romance. Unfortunately, this often leads to emotional imbalance, especially when the woman interprets his curiosity as genuine emotional investment. He might say the right things and show deep attention, but his intent is rooted in exploration, not in commitment. The pull of novelty is also tied to how men experience routine. When life feels repetitive, work, responsibilities, expectations, the excitement of a new person provides a sense of freedom. It breaks monotony. The thrill of a new connection offers a temporary escape from the ordinary, making him feel more alive, more spontaneous, more in touch with himself. But because that feeling is externally created, it can't last. When the excitement fades, he either withdraws or seeks the next new thing to reignite that spark. Understanding this dynamic is not about blaming men for being curious. It's about recognizing the emotional psychology behind it. Curiosity, when paired with maturity, can evolve into deep connection. When a man allows curiosity to lead him into understanding a woman's mind, emotions, and values, not just her physicality, it becomes something meaningful. But when curiosity is driven purely by novelty and stimulation, it remains shallow and short-lived. Recognizing when a man's attention is fueled by curiosity versus connection is crucial. If his interest thrives only on excitement and unpredictability, he may not be ready for something real. Genuine curiosity should deepen over time. It should make him want to learn, care, and connect more, not just consume and move on. When a man grows emotionally, his curiosity becomes about who you are, not just what you can offer him. And that's when novelty turns into intimacy, when discovery shifts from chasing excitement to understanding and valuing the person in front of him. Confusion is one of the most common yet least understood emotional patterns that shape why many men pursue intimacy. On the surface, it might seem simple. A man is attracted, desires closeness, and acts on it. But underneath that surface lies a deep psychological mix-up. The belief that physical intimacy equals emotional connection. For many men, this confusion begins early in life. They are rarely encouraged to express vulnerability or emotional depth, so they grow up learning that touch, not talk, is how they experience closeness. Over time, physical affection becomes their language for love, comfort, and validation. It's not that they don't crave emotional connection. They do, but they've been conditioned to access it through the physical rather than the emotional. When a man feels lonely or emotionally disconnected, he may seek intimacy as a shortcut to closeness. The physical warmth, the shared moment, the tenderness, it all mimics what real emotional intimacy feels like. For a short time, he experiences connection without having to expose his insecurities or reveal his true feelings. The chemistry feels genuine, and in that moment he believes it is. But when the physical connection fades, the illusion breaks, and he's left confused, wondering why he no longer feels close to the person he just shared something so intimate with. This confusion often leads to withdrawal, silence, or emotional distance, leaving the other person questioning what changed. Many men mistake physical intensity for emotional depth. When a moment feels passionate and powerful, they assume it must mean something deep. But passion and connection aren't the same. Passion is an emotion that burns bright but fast, while connection is built slowly through vulnerability, trust, and understanding. Because many men are uncomfortable with emotional exposure. They lean on the safety of physicality to create the feeling of intimacy without risking rejection or judgment. It's not dishonesty, it's emotional unawareness. They genuinely feel connected in the moment, but they haven't yet learned how to sustain that connection beyond physical desire. This confusion often leads to mixed signals. A man may act deeply interested, express care, and even talk about connection, but his actions are tied to moments of physical closeness. When the relationship requires emotional consistency, communication, empathy, accountability, he may seem detached. That's because he's never learned how to connect beyond the body. To him, connection feels like something that happens, not something that's built. So when the feeling disappears, he assumes the connection is gone, unaware that real connection survives beyond passion. This confusion can be painful and disorienting. It's easy to believe that a man's physical affection reflects genuine emotional investment. The tenderness, the attention, the presence, all seem like signs of love. But if his emotional availability doesn't match his physical closeness, it's a sign that he's still confusing connection with chemistry. Understanding this difference allows women to see his behavior with clarity, not disappointment. His distance after intimacy isn't necessarily rejection, it's the result of emotional confusion. He doesn't know how to transition from physical closeness to emotional depth. The real challenge is that most men don't realize they're doing this. They believe they are being sincere because their feelings in the moment are real. But sincerity and emotional depth are not the same. Without self-awareness, a man can confuse intensity for connection again and again, moving from one relationship to another, chasing the high of closeness without ever experiencing its substance. It's not until he learns emotional literacy, how to communicate, listen, and open up, that he begins to separate the temporary bond of passion from the lasting strength of emotional intimacy. When a man finally understands that true connection is not created through touch, but through trust, everything changes. He learns that intimacy begins long before the physical. It starts with honesty, presence, and emotional safety. Until that realization happens, many men remain trapped in connection confusion, seeking warmth without understanding its source. Recognizing this pattern is not about blaming them, it's about awareness. Because once a woman sees that his actions stem from confusion rather than cruelty, she can stop internalizing his inconsistency and start protecting her peace. Connection without emotional awareness will always be temporary. But when emotional understanding joins physical attraction, the connection becomes something far deeper, something real, enduring, and human. In the end, understanding the hidden reasons men seek intimacy is not about blame, it's about awareness. Every choice, every attraction carries a deeper emotional truth beneath it. Some men seek validation because they need to feel wanted. Some crave comfort because they're carrying silent pain. Others chase curiosity or novelty because they long to feel alive again. And many confuse physical desire with emotional connection because they were never taught how to separate the two. These motives don't make them bad, they make them human. But when these patterns go unrecognized, they create confusion, hurt, and emotional imbalance in relationships. Real power comes from seeing beyond the surface, recognizing not just what a man does, but why he does it. When you understand his emotional drivers, you stop taking his behavior personally. You stop mistaking passion for love, consistency for care, and physical closeness for emotional depth. This awareness gives you freedom, the freedom to choose relationships built on truth, not illusion. True intimacy isn't about what happens in a moment. It's about what remains after the moment ends. It's about two people showing up, not just with attraction, but with honesty, self-awareness, and respect. When a man connects from a place of maturity and emotional understanding, intimacy becomes something sacred, an expression of trust rather than an escape from pain. So never settle for being someone's distraction or validation. Be with someone who values your mind as much as your presence, who doesn't seek you to fill a void but to share something real. Because the deepest connection isn't found through desire, it's found through understanding. And when that understanding exists, intimacy stops being an escape and becomes exactly what it was always meant to be, a reflection of love, truth, and emotional wholeness.